There are moments in life where a person looks around and finds no one standing by their side. The phone is silent, the doors remain shut that be speaking about. The messages are unread, and the people who once claimed they'd be there forever are nowhere to be found. You sit alone in the middle of a storm, watching everything fall apart, wondering how things changed so quickly. Friends grew distant, family be speaking but didn't understand, and the world moved on like your pain was invisible, speaking about. It is in these moments that your heart aches, not just from hardship, but from loneliness. And as you feel yourself breaking, you realize something profound. There is still one who is near, one who has never turned away, one who heard your first cry in the womb and hears your silent tears at night. That is Allah. When people abandon you, speaking of Allah draws you nearer. When they judge you, He covers you. When they doubt you, He reassures you. When they hurt you, He heals you. There is something deeply powerful about realizing that you don't need to chase people, you don't need validation from the world. You don't need anyone to understand. You fully accept the one who created you because He already knows. Before you speak, He knows. Before you cry, He hears. Before you explain, He understands. When you have no one else, that is not a sign of weakness. It is the moment where your heart finally begins to taste the sweetness of true reliance on Allah. In those moments, you may not have the strength to perform long prayers or recite endless verses. You may be too broken to move your lips with eloquence. But even then, all it takes is a whisper. All it takes is a sigh of surrender. All it takes is one sincere plea, speaking about, Ya Allah. Those two words become heavier than volumes of speech. They become more effective than the help of armies. We speak because when you call upon Him with sincerity, He responds in ways that no creation ever could. The love of Allah is unlike a love you'll ever experience. He doesn't love you because of what you've done. He loves you because you are His servant, because you turn to Him, because you acknowledge Him, because you recognize that you need Him and no one else. This is when the one who remembers Allah in hardship is often more beloved than the one who only remembers Him in ease. That be speaking about. Because in hardship, you're not just saying His name out of formality. You're calling upon Him from a place of truth. Your heart is shattered, your eyes are wet, your soul is exhausted. And you still say, Oh Allah, help me. That is the essence of sincerity. That is where you discover the closeness of your Lord in a way you never knew before. Sometimes Allah will remove everyone from your life, so you learn to depend only on Him. We speak about, He will let you feel loneliness, so you discover His companionship, speaking about. He will block doors you were desperate to enter, so you find better ones through His guidance. What looks like abandonment from the world is actually protection from your Lord. When you look at the lives of the prophets, you find this lesson repeated over and over. Yusuf Anas was abandoned by his brothers, sold into slavery, wrongfully imprisoned. And yet, in all of it, he never lost his connection to Allah. He never said, why me? He never gave up, because even when he was thrown into the depths of a well, he knew that Allah was with him. When Ibrahim was thrown into the fire, he said, Hasbiyallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for me and the best disposer of affairs. And the fire became cool. When Musa stood in front of the sea, pursued by an army, and the people cried out, We're finished. He said, No, indeed with me is my Lord. He will guide me. That is what it means to have Allah. When you have no one else, you can lose your job, your wealth, your status, your home, even the people you love. But if you still have Allah, you haven't lost anything of true value, because with Him you can rebuild. With Him you can rise again. With Him, you can walk through fire and not be burned. With Him, you can face giants and not fear. With Him, you can survive what should have destroyed you. This world will always test your attachments. Speaking about, it will always pull at your heart, trying to get you to depend on things and people that are temporary. But when you let go of the creation and hold tight to the Creator, you find strength that makes no sense to the world. Speaking about, you find a peace that doesn't match your situation. You find a joy that isn't dependent on outcomes. The reasons that one sincere do can save your life is because it reminds you of who is truly in control. It strips away the illusion that your survival is tied to people or things. It brings you back to the truth that the only one who can save you is the one who created you. And when you realize that, everything changes. The anxiety begins to fade. The weight on your chest begins to lift. The fear of the unknown begins to shrink. Speaking about, because now you're walking with the one who knows the unseen. You're being guided by the one who writes destiny. You're being protected by the one whose mercy encompasses everything. Some people will think you're crazy for talking to Allah the way you do. They'll say, you're always making dua, but what's changing? They don't understand that something already has changed. Your faith has deepened. Your reliance has strengthened. Your vision has cleared. And soon they'll see your situation change too. But long before that happens, you'll already be victorious because your heart found its anchor. In a world full of chaos, you found your calm. In a life full of instability, you found your foundation. In a journey full of loss, you found your lifeline. And it all started with that one moment when you whispered in pain, Ya Allah, and knew that you were never truly alone. There are seasons in life when the days stretch endlessly with hardship and the nights are filled with silent tears. You wait, and it feels like nothing is changing. You try to be strong, but inside your heart is worn down by delay, by longing, by confusion. It is in these long moments of uncertainty where patience is tested, where doubt begins to whisper, and where your faith either breaks or becomes unshakable. And it was in such a season that I found myself clinging to a single dua, not with elaborate language, but with a broken voice and a heart that was hanging on by threads. I would repeat it over and over, not because I expected immediate change, but because I needed to survive the day. Rabbi shrah li sadri, wa yassir li amri. O my Lord, expand for me my chest and ease my task for me. That dua is from the heart of a prophet who stood on the brink of a mission that felt overwhelming. When Mirza Ozan Angas was commanded to face Pharaoh, the most tyrannical leader of his time, his first instinct was not to ask for success about, or victory or power. It was to ask for peace in his chest and ease in his task. That shows you something vital, that internal stability comes before external achievement. That if your heart is calm, you can walk through fire. That if your chest is open, you can face the worst of trials. That dua taught me that patience is not passive. It's not about sitting quietly while suffering eats away at you. Patience is strength. It is bravery. It is choosing to say, "O Ya Allah," speaking about, I trust you, even when everything around you looks like it's falling apart. There were days where I didn't want to leave my bed, days where I stared at my ceiling wondering if things would ever feel okay again, days where the smallest task felt like climbing a mountain, and I would whisper that dua not loudly, not like a speech, but like a plea, a Rabbi shrah li sadri, O Allah, my heart feels tight, my thoughts are heavy, my mind is crowded, expand my chest so I can breathe again. Give me space in my soul. Give me a window of light in this darkness. And then I would say, Wa yassir li amri. Ya Allah, everything feels difficult. I don't even know where to begin. Ease this path for me. Show me how to walk when I feel paralyzed. Help me take the first step even if I'm scared. Help me stand when I feel like collapsing and something began to change. Not all at once. The pain didn't vanish. The problems didn't disappear overnight. But my heart became calmer. The waves of panic stopped crashing so violently. The storms of confusion began to quiet down. And in that stillness, I found clarity. I started to see that patience is not just about waiting. It's about how you wait. It's at what you do in the waiting. It's about continuing to turn to Allah when you don't understand His plan. It's about saying, Alhamdulillah, even when your heart still hurts. It's about praying not because you feel strong, but because you need strength. That dua became my oxygen. In the middle of conversations, I'd whisper it under my breath. In sujood, I'd repeat it with tears. While walking or driving or lying awake at night, speaking about, I'd return to it like a child clings to a parent's embrace. And slowly, speaking about, I began to realize that patience wasn't about getting through this test quickly. It was about allowing this test to grow me. It was about letting Allah shape me through it. It was about trusting that every delay had a purpose, that every hardship was a tool for transformation, that every unanswered question was preparing me for something I couldn't yet see. I began to see that Allah wasn't punishing me. He was polishing me. He was He was pulling me closer through my pain. He was showing me that my comfort should never be in outcomes, but in Him. That I should never attach my peace to a job, a person, a resolution. My peace had to be tied to His remembrance, to my connection with Him. That is the secret to patience. It's not about endurance. It's about dependence. It's about knowing that when you are leaning entirely on Allah, you don't need to know the why or the how, speaking about. You just need to know the who. And then I started seeing the wisdom. I realized that had my plans worked out the way I wanted, I would have settled for less than what Allah was preparing for me. I realized that the delay forced me to grow in ways I wouldn't have otherwise. That the difficulty trained my soul to be resilient. That the silence made me increase my dose. That the pain made me reflect on myself more deeply. Speaking about that, the trial actually taught me what real tawakkul means. Not saying you trust Allah when things are easy, but trusting Him when you have every reason to panic. That's real faith. That's real patience. And through that journey, that one do continued to uplift me, even when people tried to give advice, even when motivational words fell flat, speaking about, even when nothing made sense, those simple prophetic words anchored me, speaking about, because they came from someone who had also faced impossible odds. They came from someone who knew that the most powerful strength isn't loud or visible. It's quiet. It's inward. It's the kind of strength that comes from knowing your Rab is watching, your Rab is guiding, your Rab is protecting. The more I said the dua, the more I found it becoming part of me. It didn't just bring patience, be speaking about. It brought contentment. It didn't just calm my mind, it nurtured my soul. It reminded me that Allah hears what people overlook, that He sees every tear, that He records every time you hold your tongue when you want to scream, that He rewards every second of struggle, that He turns every moment of sabr into mountains of ajr. And when the relief finally came, when the burden began to lift, when the light began to shine again, I looked back and realized that what truly saved me wasn't just the change in my situation. Be speaking about, it was the change in my heart. It was the patience that grew roots so deep they could no longer be shaken. It was the dua that didn't just expand my chest, it expanded my trust in Allah. It turned waiting into worship. It turned struggle into spiritual training. It turned weakness into reliance. And that is what I carry with me now. In every test that comes, I return to that same dua. I remind myself that true ease begins with an open heart. That the greatest miracle is not always in the outcome. It's in the way Allah transforms your soul in the process. It was a night like many others, but everything inside me felt different. My thoughts were loud, my heart was heavy, and no matter how many distractions I tried to throw at the pain, the H only grew louder. There is a certain type of sadness that you can't explain to anyone. Not because there are no words, but because even if you used all of them, people still wouldn't understand. I remember sitting alone in the silence of that night, speaking about, and it felt as though the darkness outside matched the darkness inside. And in that moment, I didn't make a long dua, speaking about, I didn't know what to say. I simply whispered to Allah, barely audible, from a place so deep within that even I didn't know it existed until pain uncovered it. I said, "Wa ya Allah," and I don't know what to do. And then I cried, not loudly, not for anyone to hear, just the kind of tears that fall when you've been carrying so much for so long that your heart finally collapses under the weight. That whisper, that tear-filled plea, it wasn't eloquent. It wasn't a recitation. It wasn't part of any memorized dua. It was a whisper of the soul, a broken servant speaking to the master of all things. And what I didn't know then, but understand now, is that such whispers don't just float in the air, they ascend, they rise to the Lord of the throne. They pierce the sky. We should be speaking about. They shake the gates of the heavens. Because when a heart calls out to Allah with sincerity, that dua is never rejected. It reminded me of the verse speaking about. Aman yujibu al mutara aida hug. Who is the one who responds to the desperate when he calls upon him? And the answer lies in the question itself. It is Allah. And the condition for such a response is not the eloquence of your words. We should be speaking about, but the desperation in your heart. That night, I didn't know how to phrase things properly. I just knew I couldn't hold it in anymore. I couldn't carry it on my own. I couldn't rely on people anymore. I didn't need someone to give me solutions. I needed the one who controls every solution. I needed the one who knows me better than I know myself. And from that whisper, a shift began. Not outside. The world didn't suddenly change. The problem wasn't instantly solved. But inside me, something softened, speaking about, something opened. My heart, which had been constricted and clouded, began to feel lighter. My breath, which had been shallow and tight, peeking about, began to deepen. The chaos in my mind started to slow down. It was as if Allah was responding not with words, but with peace. A peace that descended upon me in the middle of the night, not because I deserved it, because I asked for it. Not because I had perfect faith, but because I finally stopped pretending to be strong on my own. That whisper reminded me of Hajar, the wife of Ibrahim AMS, when she was alone in the desert with her crying child. No water, no help, no shelter. Speaking about, she didn't have a crowd to support her. She didn't have a lifeline. But she had one thing: hope in the mercy of Allah. She peeking ran between the mountains of Safa and Marwa, not knowing when or how relief would come, but knowing that it would. Her footsteps became part of our pilgrimage, a testament to how the desperate pleas of a sincere heart are remembered by Allah in the most powerful ways of speaking about. That's the beauty of sincere dua. It's not measured by volume, but by depth. It doesn't depend on fancy phrases, but on raw, unspeaking about, unfiltered truth. Sometimes all it takes is a whisper. A whisper you think is small, but in the heavens it is monumental. The angels write it down. The mercy of Allah surrounds it. The doors begin to open, not because you forced them, but because you finally let go of control and admitted that you needed your Lord. And often that whisper is made when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when no one even knows what you're going through. That's why it's so special speaking about, because it's only between you and Allah. There's no ego, no performance, just humility. I look back at that night speaking about, and I know now that what saved me wasn't anything I did during the day. It wasn't any external action. It was that one moment of brokenness in the dark, that one whisper, that one silent plea where I stopped trying to carry everything alone. You see, we often wait for the perfect time to make dua. We think it has to be after Salah, in Arabic, with perfect wudu, in a sacred space. And while those are beautiful etiquettes, Allah's door is always open. He doesn't wait for your perfection. He waits for your truth, your honesty, your vulnerability. Because when you come to Him as you are, should speaking about, He welcomes you with a mercy greater than you could ever imagine. From that night forward, I understood something new about dua. It is not just a means to get what you want. It is a means to discover who you are. It is speaking about that the moment where the veil drops and you confront your soul, it is where healing begins. Because sometimes be speaking about, you don't even know what you need until you speak to Allah. Sometimes you think you're asking for one thing, but in the conversation of dua, your heart begins to unravel and you realize there's so much more that needed to be addressed. And in that unraveling, in that honest dialogue with your Lord, you are restructured. Your soul is realigned. Your strength is restored, and days after that night, I saw doors open that I didn't knock on. I felt ease in things that had been blocked for months. I found clarity in decisions that used to cloud my mind. But most importantly, I found myself closer to Allah than ever before. Because once you experience that kind of sincere communication, you don't go back. You begin to speak to Allah in every situation. In happiness, you thank Him. In confusion, you seek Him. In pain, you call upon Him. It becomes your way of life. Dia becomes your constant companion. It was that whisper in the dark that changed my entire connection with my Creator out. And that's what people forget. Dia is not about changing your fate alone. It's about changing your state. It's about changing your perspective, your reaction, your heart. It turns a test into a turning point. It turns fear into surrender. It turns isolation into spiritual intimacy. When you whisper to Allah in the darkness, you are planting seeds in the soil of sincerity, speaking about. And the rain of His mercy will come, even if it takes time. And those seeds will grow in ways you never imagined. But it all begins with that whisper, that moment where you say, "Yeah, ya Allah, I'm tired, I'm lost, but I know you're there." And from that moment, the Heaves respond, speaking about. There was a point in my life where I had reached what felt like rock bottom. The kind of moment where you look around and nothing seems to be working in your favor. Plans had failed, people had walked away, finances had dipped dangerously low, and mentally I felt like I was at war with myself. No matter what I tried, it felt like I was hitting a wall. I prayed, yes. I made dua, yes. But something was missing. Until one day I came across a powerful supplication that everything, not because it was long or putic or complicated, but because it was profound in its simplicity and powerful in its surrender. I began to recite, Hasbiyallahu, ilaha illa huwa, Allahi tawakkaltu wa huwa rabbul arshil azim. Allah is sufficient for me. There is no deity except Him. Upon Him I have relied, and He is the Lord of the mighty throne. At first, I didn't fully grasp the depth of it. But something about those words, Hasbiyallahu, struck a chord deep within. It means Allah is enough for me, speaking about. And that long began to unravel the knots in my chest. to be speaking about. I realized that the reason I felt so broken was because I had placed my trust in everything except the one who never fails. Be speaking about. I expected people to understand my struggle. I expected opportunities to knock. I expected things to work out on my timing. And when none of it did, I was left disappointed, anxious, and exhausted. But with that one line, my focus shifted from seeking help in the creation to placing reliance on the Creator. From needing outcomes to needing only His support. I repeated that due day and night. While driving, I whispered it. While walking, I murmured it. In Sujood, I cried it. And the more I said it, the more I began to feel a calmness enter my heart that no external solution had been able to give me. It was as if I was telling my problems, I don't need you to go away immediately because I have someone greater by my side. It was as if I was telling my fears, you can stand before me, but I stand with Allah. Hasbillahu wasn't just a statement. It was a declaration of surrender, of faith, of trust. And that is when everything started to change, not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, subtly, beautifully. Doors that had been closed began to open. Ideas that had never occurred to me started to flow. People who I never expected to support me showed up. But more than that, I began to see the situation itself differently. What once felt like a burden now felt like a test I could carry. What once seemed impossible now seemed manageable. What once made me cry out of helplessness now made me cry out of gratitude. All because I shifted from relying on myself and others to fully relying on Allah. And that is the reality of this dua. It doesn't just change what is around you. It transforms what is within you. When you say, Hasbi Allah, you are not denying the pain. You are not pretending the problem doesn't exist. You are simply declaring that your reliance is now with the one who owns all solutions. That even if the entire world turns against you, the one who created you is still with you. And when He is with you, then nothing can overpower you. When you say, Hasbiyallahu, you are calling upon the one who took care of Ibrahim as when he was thrown into the fire, he said those words, Hasbiyal huwa animal wako. And the fire was commanded to be cool and safe for him. When you say those words, you are invoking the same reliance that made the fire harmless, the same faith that split the sea, the same trust that saved prophets in their most desperate moments. I remember a day where things had gotten especially tough. I had received news that one of the remaining hopes I was holding onto had fallen through. I walked into the masjid for salah with my heart heavier than ever. I could barely concentrate. My mind was clouded, and I just wanted relief. After the prayer, I sat quietly and repeated that dua over and over again. And it was in that sitting, in that stillness, that my heart felt something shift. I wasn't thinking about the problem anymore. I was thinking about the one who could solve it. And that shift was everything. Because once your heart attaches to the Creator more than the creation, you are no longer a slave to outcomes. That's when you begin to taste true contentment. Not because everything is going your way, but because you know that whatever direction your life takes, it is under the perfect care and control of the most merciful. That kind of trust lifts the burdens off your shoulders and places them in the hands of the one who can carry them better than you ever could. That's speaking what this dua does. It removes you from the illusion of control and places you in a state of divine dependence. Think about, you no longer panic when plans fall through because you know Allah has written something better. Speaking about, you no longer feel despair when people let you down because you weren't relying on them to begin with. You no longer fear the unknown because your faith is in the one who already knows, and soon I began to witness that what I thought was a setback was actually a setup, that the failure was protection, that the delay was divine planning, that the pain was purification that we're speaking about, that the closed door wasn't rejection but redirection. I would not have seen any of that had I not let go and placed my full trust in Allah, had I not repeated that dua with conviction, had I not truly meant it when I said, Hasbi Allah illa ilaha illa huwa. That single line carried me through storms we speaking about. It gave me the courage to take steps I had feared. It gave me the peace to rest when I couldn't see what was coming. It gave me the strength to stand when everything inside me wanted to collapse. This is the reality of Tawakkul. Reliance upon Allah. It is not about sitting back and doing nothing. It is about doing your part and knowing that Allah will handle what you cannot. It is about taking the means with your hands while placing your trust with your heart in the one who controls the outcome. That balance is what allows a believer to smile in the middle of pain, to walk with confidence even when the path is unclear, to make dua not as a last resort, but as the first and strongest weapon. And every time now that I face something uncertain, every time I feel that wave of anxiety trying to rise again, I return to that same dua. It has become my shield, my sanctuary, my source speaking about, my source of strength, because what saved me in that lowest moment wasn't a person or a plan or a breakthrough. It was a sentence of surrender to the Lord of the throne. And the moment I truly meant it, everything began to turn. In a world full of distractions, demands, and constant noise, the believer holds on to something that the world can neither touch nor understand. That something is dua. It is the secret strength that the believer draws from the conversation that never ends, the connection that never drops, the source of peace that flows not from wealth or status, but from sincerity and surrender. Dua is not just a part of worship. It is worship itself. It is the heart's cry, the soul's whisper, the believer's lifeline when all else fails. You see, everything in life has a limit. People's patience runs out. Support systems break. Advice becomes repetitive. Even your own strength weakens over time. But the door of dua is one that never closes. The more you knock, the more it opens. The more you speak, the more you are heard. The more you return, the more you are welcomed. Allah never gets tired of hearing your voice, even if you've made the same mistake 1,000 times. He never says, "You've asked too much." He never says, "You've come too late." That's the beauty of turning to the one whose mercy is not like human mercy. His mercy is infinite. His door is always open, and his response is always perfectly timed. There were times in my life where I felt like I couldn't carry on. Times when everything outside seemed fine, but inside I was crumbling. On those days, I didn't always know what to do. But I did know where to turn. I turned to my prayer mat. I turned to the one who knows the hearts of his servants. I sat with my hands raised and heart broken. And even if the words didn't always come easily, I knew he heard what I couldn't say. That's the miracle of dua. It doesn't require articulation. It requires authenticity. Sometimes a tear says more than a sentence. A sigh says more than a paragraph. And Allah hears it all. Dua is the language of the weak, the hurting, the hopeful, the grateful, the lost, and the found. It is what keeps the believer grounded when life spins out of control. It is what gives hope when everyone else says it's over. It is what brings light into places where even the sun cannot reach. When you understand the power of dua, you realize that nothing is truly out of reach. You may not have the means. You may not know the path. You may not see the answer. But if you have the ability to raise your hands and say, "Why Allah?" then you still have everything you need to keep going. The Prophet said that dua is the weapon of the believer. Just like a weapon protects you in battle, dua protects you in the trials of life. It shields you from harm. It brings you strength when you are vulnerable. It pushes away things you never even knew were coming your way. Sometimes the very thing you asked Allah to remove was never destined to touch you simply because you made that dua months before. There are angels who descend with protection for the one who makes sincere supplication. There are decrees that are softened, delayed, or completely erased because of the way you cried to Allah at night when no one else saw you. The one who lives a life of du'as, never truly alone. They walk through life with an invisible strength. Others may see them smiling and think it's confidence, but in reality, it's faith. Others may see them calm and think it's personality, but in reality, it's tawakkul. They've built a habit of turning to Allah before anyone else. They've tasted the sweetness of whispering their needs to the one who already knows them. And once you taste that sweetness, you never settle for the bitterness of depending solely on the world again. What people don't realize is that dua is not just a means to get what you want. It's a means to connect with the one who already knows what's best. Sometimes you will ask for something and Allah will delay it, not to deny you, but to give you something better, or to protect you from something worse, or to build in you a patience and strength that you didn't know you needed. And in that delay, you grow, you change, you mature, you learn to let go of control and submit to the one who has the ultimate control. Sometimes Allah will not give you what you asked for, not because He rejected your prayer, but because He elevated it. He replaced it with something that your heart wouldn't have known to ask for. He exchanged your request with something that will benefit you in your akhirah, because that's what dua does. It builds your dunya and your akhirah. It shapes your journey in both worlds. Every why Allah is recorded. Every tear is collected. Every silent plea is written. And even if you don't see the results in this life, you will see them in a form more beautiful in the next. One of the most powerful aspects of dua is that it is not limited by language, age, or circumstance. A child can raise their hands and Allah will hear them. An old man can whisper into the wind and Allah will respond. A woman in distress, a refugee fleeing war, a man crying in sujood, a student asking for success, a worker praying for provision. Each one of them is heard by the same Lord. That is what makes dua so powerful. It is the great equalizer. It removes the barriers of status and knowledge. You don't need to be a scholar to make dua. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be sincere. I've seen people's lives change because of one sincere dua. I've seen illnesses healed, families reunited, debts paid off, hearts healed, paths opened, and miracles unfold, all because someone turned to Allah with a broken heart and firm belief. Not belief that they deserved it, but belief that Allah is capable of anything, that He can say, be, and it is, that He can lift mountains of grief with a whisper of His mercy, that He can open the seas, make the impossible possible, and write a destiny far greater than what you imagined. And even when the dua isn't answered in the way you hoped, it still serves you. It still strengthens your bond with your Lord. It still brings you reward. It still softens your heart. It still brings tranquility to your soul, because at its core, dua is not about the outcome. It's about the connection. It's about remembering that you are never without access to the one who holds the keys to every door. That no matter how heavy life becomes, you have a way to lighten it. That no matter how lost you feel, you have a map back to your Lord When you live with dua as your lifeline, you begin to see everything differently. A delay becomes a lesson. A hardship becomes a door. A test becomes a means of purification. A tear becomes a seed of hope. And all of it draws you closer to the one who created you not to suffer, but to rise. Not to drown, but to learn how to swim. Not to despair, but to return to him with a heart full of remembrance and trust. So when life gets overwhelming, when people don't understand, when you don't even understand yourself, make dua. Whisper your fears, speak your pain, share your hopes, confess your weaknesses, thank him for your blessings, beg him for your needs. And trust that every word is heard, every moment is recorded, and every sincere supplication has already begun to shape your destiny in ways you cannot yet see